Chapter 25 discusses counseling individuals living in poverty. This is an incredibly important chapter. It doesn't encompass very many pages in your textbook, but it is crucial for your understanding and for your attention as you continue to be reflective, insightful, and thorough counselors working with diverse populations. So as I just mentioned, if you're a counselor from a middle or an upper class background, it's imperative that you be mindful of your bias, your prejudices, your blind spots, and then of course, just be mindful of what life is like for clients and individuals living in poverty. What is your idea of poverty? How has poverty been defined by you? What assumptions do you make about individuals who are low income? Are you as a counselor contributing to oppression? Are you contributing to factors that may impede or prevent your clients from seeking the assistance that they want and need? Your assignment this week specifically talks about our code of ethics as counselors, and our stated responsibility to address differences in class and differences in finances and differences in individuals related to finances and your ability to provide services for them. And so I'm not going to give too much away, but we do have a responsibility. We do have a focus. We do have some ownership. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say because I want you to look it up. And we'll talk about all of this when we meet next week, of course. So your textbook provides an awful lot of pretty interesting data regarding poverty rates, information on the individuals and the groups that tend to sort of exist in these pretty deplorable rates that your book talks about. And I'm not going to go into these because you guys can, of course, read these, but, women are more likely to live in poverty than men. This top 1% of American families owning 22% of America's wealth. Okay, well, we've known this for quite some time, and we don't tend to be, as a society, doing too much about it. And what does that mean for your clients? What does that mean for the clients who can't even fathom this type of wealth? What does it mean for this last bullet point? What does it mean for your clients who fall below that poverty line? Or maybe they don't fall below that poverty line. They actually make more than the cutoff point for being considered poverty, but still struggle to just pay for things, to be able to afford a seat at the table, if you will. And what does that mean for all facets of their life? And specifically as it relates to you, what does that mean for your counseling sessions? What does that mean for the services that you provide? Let's see. I like that your book goes into strength of individuals living in poverty. I think that's important. Certainly as counselors, we're a strength-based profession. So it's sort of crucial for us to remember that through all these struggles and trials and tribulations of maybe their life living in poverty, and oftentimes this is sort of intergenerational poverty, and what is it? What strength do they possess as you're working with them? What can you point out? What can you highlight? We don't tend to talk about this too much. Some cultural challenges or some specific challenges related to being poor. This is not new. We all know that as a society we tend to glamorize wealth over maybe intellect or oftentimes even hard work. And we can talk about that when we're in person. I'm certain that lots of you all have, that you all have lots of examples that you can share. And I'm certainly interested in those of you that have experience working in the counseling field already in some sort of capacity, or those of you that are teachers, I'm really interested in the conversation that we can have around poverty and what's it like working with folks who may live in poverty, and what are some of those struggles like. I'm certain those of you that are teachers can talk about just sort of the basic needs not being met, and I'm interested in that conversation. Of course, that sort of segues right into this next PowerPoint talking about educational inequalities. I was pretty interested. What I found pretty interesting in the chapter was on page 712. It says the cost of college education has escalated at a rate higher than both inflation and family income. I don't know why this was surprising to me. I guess it probably shouldn't have been. But I tend to, when I hear numbers, I tend to sort of plug my ears and not listen. So to be able to read that, considering inflation and considering rise in family income over the years, the cost of education has far surpassed keeping up with those levels, and that's quite interesting to me. And it's that's pretty disheartening, I think, for me anyway, to sort of read this. And then, of course, as your book talks about, the 40% of low-income students do tend to drop out, or that summer melt, and that's not really surprising to me. That's not surprising to me at all. Mental illness. So poverty or being in sort of the lower SES rung and mental illness goes hand in hand. And then we include substance use disorders in with mental illness. It just sort of increases exponentially. And so we can discuss this specific examples if you all would like when we meet. But know that it's not sort of just because you live in poverty or just because you were poor doesn't necessarily mean that you will develop these emotional problems. It's not clear cut like this. It's more so, what are the factors related to the individual living in poverty that could potentially hasten or increase or support or foster mental health issues. So your book talks about anxiety and depression, and then of course trauma. So when you live in poverty and you live in sort of traumatic, violent neighborhoods, then you're exposed to traumatic events, and now we're talking PTSD and anxiety and depression, and just the mental health issues can sort of run the gamut. Let's see. The judicial system, we'll talk about this more in detail when we meet again, but this should also not be a surprise to most of you. The justice system tends to get the rap that it's really the who can and who cannot, the haves and the have-nots. The haves can get out of jail and can sort of buy their way out of trouble much easier than individuals who are poor or living in poverty. An incredibly egregious example of that is probably the Jussie Smollett incident that just happened, I'm not going to get into that on this video because I would just be having that conversation with myself. So I'll hold off on that until we can meet in person. But maybe in the meantime, think about your response, your feelings on that instance, and maybe even other instances that we can sort of bring up and talk about. What is it like to be in trouble with the law if you are poor, versus what is it like for you to be in trouble with the law and the justice system if you are wealthy. Minimum wage, this is sort of a hot button issue right now in politics currently, with no surprise, one party favoring higher minimum wage than the other, and what does that mean? Even if we do increase the minimum wage, can families and individuals still sort of afford basic needs and wants? And again, as a counselor, whether you're a school counselor or a clinical mental health counselor, What does that mean for your clients? What does that mean for your work with them? What does that mean for the fees you assess and how you go about doing that? And we can talk about sliding scale fees and some of the work that you can do to address this wage gap in your clients. Healthcare inequities. It might be common for you to have conversations with your clients about basic, simple, or what seems like basic or common healthcare issues and concerns. But we also have to be mindful of the fact that, not everyone can get the healthcare that they need because of these financial differences and because of poverty. And so certain mental health issues and illnesses can manifest themselves, can be as a result of physical issues and vice versa. So physical issues causing some mental health issues causing physical issues. And we have to be mindful as counselors to bring that to our clients' attention. But we also have to be mindful of the fact that when we're bringing up, okay, you need to go see another provider, what does that mean for your client financially? And then we're going to all discuss negative attitudes and beliefs. So we're going to talk about your biases, your misconceptions, your prejudices, and your discrimination around poverty when we meet. Okay, that's it.